No propaganda, no lies, and definitely no BS. You're with Johnny VEdmore on today's News Talk, TNT.
Hello, and welcome back to the Johnny VEdmore Show. I'm talking to Addy Ads. Now, we're having a really interesting conversation that, of course, piques my interest because I do believe what you're saying there is very true, that it's not necessarily the news that needs analyzing nowadays, but it's the people who are seeding propaganda into the news as though they're independent and alternative media sources. And it is a minefield to try and work out who's real and who's not. If you were to give an estimate, because I've given these estimates out, but if you were to give an estimate, how much of the alternative or indie media do you think is actually co-opted by some bigger force?
Sure. That's tough to say, Johnny. I would say if I'm going to be really conservative with my estimate, I would say at least a plurality, at least a plurality of that group, if not a simple majority. So yeah, I would say at least half. And that's probably way off. It's probably closer like 80%. It's really disappointing. It's disheartening learning this um, about these people. And there is kind of an old breed of journalists which doesn't really exist anymore that they could make it classically, and support themselves on their own. But once you get into kind of like the X gen and younger, uh, those that starts to become a red flag. If somebody's living abroad and they're supporting themselves solely on journalism, or at least they purport that's the case, that's a red flag. Something like what Johnny mentioned, that's extremely significant if you enter a Twitter space and another well-known journalist leaves. I've had that happen with actually Matthew Tierman, the Polish Jewish guy who appears in my book Escape from Brazil, many times. He was also part of the Project Veritas mutiny, which in itself is a whole kind of ball of wax. I'm not sure that wasn't a controlled demolition. And I feel the same way about Tucker's kind of exit from Fox. I was kind of skipping around a bit here, but all these stories and these questions, they fall under this umbrella of meta journalism. And going back to Dawson for a second, I met him a couple times, and the first time I met him was on the West Coast. And when I met him there, he had what appeared to be a bona fide bodyguard with him. And I did say when I was in Brazil, I had a bodyguard. That was actually untrue at the time. And I explained who this guy is, who's connected to the outlet I was working for, connected to the CIA. But this guy and he wasn't. He was a finance guy. This guy was like 220 pounds, and he was in shape, and he ate like a whole steak in front of me. He was in shape. He didn't really explain who he was, and so it's like, why do you feel like you need to have this guy with you when you meet me? So kind of putting in all the dots on the map, it just adds up to the mosaic of who these people are. What aren't they talking about? Who aren't they criticizing? Whose work aren't they citing? That's ridiculous that Tucker and Bannon and and Emerald Robinson and all those people just like completely ignored the work I did. I basically put my life at risk to get a great story, and they don't care. And so explaining this to people is so important. And moreover, I just think in general, the integrity and work ethic of a person matters, especially a journalist. These are the people who are telling the stories about our society, and knowing who butters their bagel, who butters their bread. This is relevant, and these are fair questions to ask. So I'm going to keep asking them.
This is Johnny VEdmore on today's News Talk, TNT.